This is Phantom Electric Ghost, and we're live on there with David Fox. And for the first time, we wanted to also let everybody know that this podcast will be on Newsly within an hour. And so you can use coupon code GHOST and get 1 month free premium subscription so you can stop scrolling and start listening. And so they're a good sponsor of the show, so we like to mention them. And people will be able to listen to the podcast there. So thank you.
Cool. Hi.
How you doing? So your company is .Ninja SEO.
Yeah.
And you were a musician and you got into SEO because maybe you can tell that story. How did that happen?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I've been doing music for a long time. I've been in bands and just playing shows around my area, which is Ontario, just locally and stuff. Not like a big, nothing too big, but yeah, I've been a musician. I've also taught music here and taught drums and guitar and singing and things like that at the local music school. And I've taught privately as well. And so that was going okay, but it was just never like a huge moneymaker or anything like that. So at some point, when I got to about late 30s, I was like, I should, maybe try to figure out some other skills here that might help me through my life. So I kind of started getting into internet marketing. I just sort of stumbled across it one day. I was like, on YouTube, and I just like saw some video. It was this guy called the lazy ass stoner. He's like a marketing guy. He's talking. Have you ever heard of this guy?
No, that sounds like it would appeal to a musician, maybe.
Yeah, it totally brought me in because he's just like, yeah, man, Pinterest, like you can dominate Pinterest, like it's so easy, just like do this. I'm like, what's he talking about? Like, so this would have been like 2014, and I just was like, what is he talking about? It was like March break too, so I was like, it was like dead of winter here, and so I was just at home, like watching videos for a while. And I'm like, is there something going on that I'm missing here? Like, am I missing out on something? And then that's when I kind of clued into like the whole SEO kind of concept, I guess. And then from there, I kind of.
A lot of people probably don't even know. I mean, musicians, we know we have to use it. YouTubers, podcasters. But tell people, like, what is SEO? What exactly is it, and how does it help somebody that has a business, somebody that's a musician, somebody that's a podcaster, that's an influencer? How does that help engage your fans, better?
Well, it's like a set of best practices, really. Like, it's sort of going on the internet, and like you can either be aware of it or not aware of it, but it's like sort of how the algorithm works, right? So when I first got into it, and it takes a while to understand it, because I guess maybe some people, they have been aware of it for 10 years now or 20 years. Like, it's been around for a while, the idea of it, and just sort of like the algorithms have been, Google and like whatnot have been incorporated. Like every platform uses SEO to a degree. So like search engine optimization, or, so it means like just getting exposure in the results. And so you can either pay for it, or you can work it so that you can show up organically. So you don't have to pay for it. You're paying with your time, of course, because you have to figure out how to make it work and stuff. So it's like it's sort of behind the scenes. Like if you have a website, for example, like it's like the metadata and like the sort of like the functionality of the website is sort of SEO based, like websites, sort of Google will send its like robots. Like people might not even be aware that Google sends like little robots to your website to like scan it. And then, basically like, do you know about this, or like,
Well, I'm an IT guy. I'm a software designer.
So okay. So you're well aware of it.
I build big systems though. I mean, I build for banks and insurance companies, but we use it.
Oh yeah. So yeah, sort of it's the same idea, I guess. Like, because it's interesting because even banks and stuff, like sometimes they're like the sort of website itself might not have a very good user interface, or like it can like get screwed up at any level, right? So it's like you can have like a very simple website which has very good SEO, and you can have a very complicated website which has very bad SEO. So it's like depending on like who's running the website. Like for instance, in my city, there's like the YMCA in my city has like really bad SEO. It's not like in the sense that it's like it's not even mobile friendly at this point. So like you go on the YMCA website, and like you have to zoom in on it, and like like it's like you're looking through like a
Very
peephole or
hard to
something.
navigate. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not optimized for phones or iPads or anything, right?
No. Which is
Yeah.
crazy because like they should this like most of the
Yeah.
YMCA's are optimized, but this one is not. So
Yeah. Well, so it depends on
um
what they feel like. Sometimes people are not into IT,
yeah,
because
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
I'm an IT nerd, but
Yeah.
I'm an electronic musician. That's how I got into it because
Okay.
I'm a synthesist and I design
Okay.
sound, so I have to
Right.
program.
Nice.
So I've always
Yeah.
programmed, and I said, well, I might as well make money programming too.
Right, right. Yeah.
So I do it for like banks and insurance companies, but for art, I use my
Mhm.
Moog, I use my Roland, and I
Yeah.
go in and I program them. So it wasn't so hard. I think electronic musicians who actually do the level of programming that we do, it's not hard to
Mhm.
understand stuff like SEO. But if
Yeah,
you're
for
an
sure.
organic musician and you never touch computers,
Yeah.
you probably like, I don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah, exactly, right? There's like sort of like different types of musicians that would be like techno geeks versus like just you know, guitar strumming, acoustic,
A folky.
ballad, folk
Or
people, and they just like
or a
don't,
punk rocker that that's like against everything. So it's like I'm not gonna take time to learn that.
Yeah, I know lots of people like that that are basically just like they have like, they're much younger than me, but they don't actually have like they don't take the time. They know less about it than me. So it's interesting how like you can be very young and have all the latest like social
Yeah,
platforms and stuff like that, but not even be kind of like
engage.
thinking about it. So I mean, I don't want to like stereotype people. There are some people that are like, folk musicians that would be very like, very
Up on it. Well,
knowledgeable
yeah,
about it.
I think that once if you get into like fact that you're into social action, right? And you're
Hmm.
into like activism, you might stumble into it because like, oh, I want to be more effective in my campaigns for
Yeah.
humanity, right? So then you actually
Right.
learn about it from that angle, and then you get into it, right? But
Yeah.
you had to have a reason to drive you because if it was for that person, if it was about money, they'd be like, I don't want to do it for money. I want to do it
Right.
because I'm an activist, and then they
Yeah.
push that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's like a motivation behind it. But yeah, you'd have to like, for instance, with Facebook or whatever, like you can't run a Facebook ad campaign without having some idea of what's going on, right? Because otherwise it's just gonna like, you won't even be able to run the ads
Yeah, yeah, it
without.
wasn't it won't e yeah, I mean, because you just look at how they tell you to just go in as a neophyte and just run it without doing an analysis, like, who's your
Yeah.
market, right? Where should
Yeah.
you actually run that ad, right? Like, if you
Right.
run it into you run it into, like, some country, okay, I'm just gonna run it there because that's where all the bots are.
Yeah, yeah. I know people that do that. They'll be like, I know a guy specifically, he's a friend of mine that like for some reason, or not for some reason, but he specifically like ended up targeting like African people because I guess it was cheaper than the like, because in the when you target like say a small town in North America, sometimes like if you're smart targeting a small town, Facebook just goes like, I can't target that town. You have to like
Yeah.
target like a certain area, and then the price of the cost per click goes up, and then you're like, what about this town over here in Africa? And it's like, oh, that's super cheap, like,
Yeah,
and
so
then
don't target there.
yeah, so you target there, you target like at some point
Bye-bye.
I was target yeah, like at some point I was somehow I was like getting Turkish clicks or whatever. So it was like you know, everyone that was commenting on one of my campaigns a while ago was like a Turkish guy,
Yeah, that's weird.
because
But
it's
yeah,
just
I mean, you never
cheaper or
know
something.
with a lot of us musicians. Like I get people from like Iceland,
Yeah.
Norway, Netherlands,
Yeah.
because that's where the scenes I'm in. That's what
Right.
So I'll get Berlin, and people are like, "Well, how you getting that?" I got like
Right.
Latvia,
Yeah.
but
Right.
Latvia, it wasn't a joke because there's actually a bunch of electronic musicians there, and they actually
Yeah.
were
Right.
digging me. And so I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
well, that actually isn't a bad idea to target there because there's a lot of them." And I
Yeah.
actually found a bunch
Exactly.
of producers that were into it. It was more like for the producer people. So
Yeah.
sometimes, like,
Yeah.
if you're targeting, like, other artists and producers, not exactly the fans, but, like, you end
Yeah.
up becoming, like, somebody that producers 'cause I end up getting a lot of work with other musicians,
Right.
the producers. So if I target where
Mhm.
their scenes are, then I
Right.
actually get work, and it's actually valuable because I actually go and end up working on
Right,
stuff.
exactly. Like, I would actually just, like, straight up recommend it because, it's like it just for exactly why you just said, because sometimes your scene is not, like, in your hometown, right? So, um, and it's just like and you have to even if you like, for instance, with my Spotify, like, artist thing, like, I have a Spotify for artists, and
Mhm.
it sends you monthly like the list of like your plays and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And it shows you it's like a lot of them are just from. Can I swear on this podcast?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good
They're
words.
from fucking like they're from everywhere. So you're like,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, the guy from like it's all over the world. So like, unless but a musician might look at that and go like, I don't want like these people from whatever like Nicaragua listen like
Yeah.
it's like, but then it's like, why the fuck not? I guess the thing is they do pay less per like the certain countries like if
Yeah,
you get a
yeah,
Spotify play
Cambodia
and
or like
yeah
Thailand, like Singapore, and but the thing
yeah
is like I find I get a lot of Asian fans. I got a lot of
yeah
fans from like Thailand, Singapore, and
mm,
they're into it. They're into like the type
yeah
of music I'm doing. They're actually into it.
yeah
So like I don't like where I am in New Hampshire, I've got no
mm,
organic fans in New Hampshire. When I play, I
right
have to play in Boston or New York.
right
In the Northeast,
yeah
that's where I have to go. Or otherwise, I go to the New Orleans or I go to Los Angeles. But like
yeah
I'm not gonna because the place I'm in is full of folkies. They're into
right
like they're like all they want is rock and folk. And so
right
I'm
yeah
not gonna get good engagement trying to get people in Manchester or Nashua. That makes no
yeah
sense. I gotta
yeah
actually go to where they are, you know.
yeah like you can't even convert them either like they're just not into it.
They're not gonna be into it. I mean, they don't I mean,
Yeah.
Boston, Fenway, there's an EDM club. I can target
Okay.
that place. But
Mhm.
that's not even the best area really. Target in New York City is a
Yeah.
better bang for the buck and
Mhm.
target in LA or like even
Yeah.
like you jump to like Berlin. Berlin,
Right.
to the Brian Eno and what Bowie
Mhm.
did in the 70s
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Kraftwerk came out of there.
Mhm.
Iceland, Netherlands, Australia. I mean, I've got tons of like friends and who are musicians. Like in Australia, I know like 4 or 5 different bands
Oh,
that
yeah.
are like into what I do, and we do an online festival, and I get
Mhm.
these bands from like Latvia and Berlin to all come and play because they're like, I'm in a scene, but it's like a global scene. And when I
Yeah.
realized that, like the pandemic wasn't a big problem for me because most of the people who are in my scene, they're
Mhm.
like in like 30, 40 different countries.
Yeah, so you can't really go wrong, I guess, if you have that sort of technical but people just get so, like, fucked up from just trying to like, in my one band that I'm in, like, just hooking up, like, is it OBS or whatever that,
Oh yeah,
the
OBS is I had that was I had to spend for a festival I did.
Mhm.
I spent an hour with each band showing
Yeah.
them how to hook up OBS, how to hook up their DAW. The biggest
Yeah.
problem was getting people with DAWs to learn
Right.
how to do a driver that would actually come into StreamYard, which like I
Yeah.
don't have a problem because I use a mixer. So I actually
Mhm.
have I have like an L8 Zoom and it just
Okay.
hooks up. Right? But people who have DAWs, you
Yeah.
actually have to go and create a driver. Like if you're not a techie and you're a
Yeah.
musician, it's like, well, how do I make a driver? And like
Yeah.
that right there, then it takes me like a half
It
hour to
takes
show them how to do
forever.
the driver, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, we like in my band, like we're like a punk band kind of, and like now the jam hall looks like it's like lit up with fucking like all this stuff like that it was never there before, and it's kind of makes it a little more like we're not even necessarily good at that stuff, so it's like just getting the drivers working, getting like we're lucky if we get it going now at this point.
Mhm.
It's like a year, like we practice and then we like play around with like the OBS stuff, and it's like, but to me, like actually like I basically kind of dropped the whole band thing in a way because like I record mostly myself and just like put it out there, but I do it more
Mhm.
as like like it's just for fun almost like
Songwriter,
not for
yeah.
fun, but like it's more like my just my passion. But I switched over to like I did with the marketing stuff. I just did I was doing affiliate marketing for like 5 years with Amazon stuff, and I had like
Mhm.
ads running and like had many websites and was making like pretty good money with it. And it was like actually that was like making me all my money right at that point. Like the music stuff was just very like minimal with the financial, gain
Yeah,
or
it's
whatever.
very
So
hard. Yeah, well, that's why I got
yeah,
into podcasting because I
yeah,
got
yeah,
into podcasting so I could, you can see all my Moog behind me.
yeah,
But
yeah. Nice.
like I do the music, and the music I get deals. I get to work on video game soundtracks. I get to
Yeah,
work with other producers, and so
yeah,
like you might not really know who I am, but I actually other musicians actually know who I am, and I get to work with them.
yeah.
So I'm able to do that, and then the podcast gets me affiliate marketing, gets me
Hmm.
influence marketing. So,
Mhm.
you can see I've got, like partners that
Right.
I've worked with. And the
Yeah.
podcasting has made more money than the music, but it's
Right.
actually supporting the music, and the music actually still gets me guests because I get a
Mhm.
lot of guests that are musicians on
Yeah.
this podcast. And so I'm able to kind of, because I'm a musician, I have a kind of behind the music type of way of doing things. And so I've been able to
Mhm.
kind of launch into a different world where I'm a musician, but I'm a podcaster interviewing,
Yeah.
emerging and independent artists all over the world, not just in
Yeah.
the US, multiple genres. And that's
Yeah.
how I found my niche.
Hmm. That's cool. Like, I mean, I kind of wanted to do what you're doing, I guess, because that's why I got on Podmatch. I was like, shit, like I want to just see what's going on with the in that world. So I was like, and I kind of like rambling and babbling on. So like I'm like I could go on these podcasts and babble on for a bit. Like that'll be fun.
Yeah.
So other stuff stresses me out. Like I have certain problems and phobias and stuff. But for some reason, I can just come on a podcast and be like a random fuck on a podcast, no problem. Like,
Yeah.
uh,
It's
so I
it's
mean,
like the new meet and greet. Well, I just love the
yeah,
connections because
yeah, me
I've
too. It's
been
like,
like I
yeah,
yeah, I was able to branch into not
yeah,
just musicians, but like people like yourself doing like services. I've been
yeah,
talking to people who are like, shamans. I started
yeah.
talking
Okay.
to like psychoanalysts,
Yeah.
CEOs, like film
Yeah,
directors,
that's
because
super dope, right? Like,
I had
yeah.
to branch into like entertainment because for years I was just only going to do music. And
Yeah.
then I saw the numbers drop. I said, "Well, I'm
Mhm.
gonna have to change that." And so I started
Mhm.
branching into, like, entertainment, and then
Yeah.
just any kind of podcast was like, "Okay, well, what's expansive?" Well, talking to
Right.
a shaman about because all musicians might run into problems where they need to go see a psychoanalyst or need to see somebody. So bringing
Mhm.
somebody on that's actually like a psychotherapist or a social worker, that's not a bad
Yeah.
idea because you can get people to like, "Oh, maybe I do need self-help." So
Right.
so I've been able to kind of try to swing it to show that, hey, this does relate.
Yeah. It's all connected in some way. Like, and yeah, you just sort of tie it into your overall, because you're not just like a, one type of thing. You're like, you're doing many things at the same time. And, but yeah, like I basically like, for the past couple of years, I was doing drop shipping for like a couple of years, and like
Yeah, yeah.
so I switched out of like affiliate marketing into drop shipping, and that was like a whole thing too. Like I was basically running like a patio store on my laptop, um,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
it was like crazy because like we were selling like fire pits, gazebos, and
Did you
sectionals.
get did you get burned out on that and just switch to SEO? Is
Well, no, this was after all that stuff. Like this was like this was last year.
Mhm.
The problem with it was that it was like well, COVID was sort of like slowing down the supply chain a bit, and
Oh, yeah,
not
supply chain is a
yeah.
big problem, yeah.
So that was a problem, but then that wasn't the main problem. The main problem was just like the store, like even though it was like relatively cheap to run, like it's cheaper to run an online store than it is to run like a brick and mortar
Yeah, brick and mortar,
storefront.
yeah.
But like as far as like still the overhead was like kind of high. It was like $500 a month because we had like an office, like which was just a mailbox and sort of like wasn't really an office, but like on Google my business, like our office was literally like a building because it was a building, but it wasn't like our building. Like we could go to that building, but it wasn't technically our office, but it looked like we had an office, right? Um, so like on Google Maps, it'd be like they're at like in this building, and we're like we have a mailbox in that building. But
Yeah, yeah.
anyway,
Well, you have to have
yeah.
that physical address on the Google to, like, be able to do that, I guess. I think
Yeah,
that
well, we couldn't even fully like make use of like all of this stuff because we were trying to get into Google Merchant, which is like their shopping stuff.
Mhm.
But at that point, they'd put a cap on like they didn't really tell anyone, but they were like not letting anybody else in. So
Oh,
we
they
like
were
paid like
restricting
yeah,
it?
they made it so like we were like basically trying to back way in with like we just applied and applied, and there's nothing like wrong with our like we should have been able to get in, but I guess like it was like 1,000 times more online businesses had applied that year.
Oh, they
It's
had a
like
big queue problem, then they had a queue and they couldn't, like, set them up.
yeah,
Yeah,
like we actually talked to like some like we had a company where like we'll just hire this company to get us in because some company was claiming like guaranteed
they could get you in.
we'll get you in, and literally they couldn't even get us in. They're like they talked to some guys at Google, and Google's like nobody's getting in, and I'm like okay, so we couldn't get in, but like, and that was a problem because like, you know, we were trying to use like, you know, that system to promote our stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, you
and
actually have to be inside that system to take advantage of their packets and all the stuff they do, like all the
yeah,
programs or all the different that they offer. Yeah,
yeah.
if you can't turn it on, then you're like, well, what's the point of paying a fee if I can't turn it on?
Yeah, like we just because you have to. Well, actually, you don't. Do you have to pay for merchant? I don't know if you have to pay for merchant. You just have to apply to merchant and then get in, and then
Get
Google
in.
Merchant sort of like you kind of have to. I think you have to like FTP them some kind of like doc every month, like update your inventory and shit like that. And it was just
Okay.
like the problem was mainly like my math skills aren't super high, so margins were kind of a problem. Like we were charging too much basically for like stuff that we were charging the average for
Mhm.
like high ticket items, but and we sold some of them, but like the thing is we were like right in the middle, so the guys that were like undercutting and somehow had those deals like to get the lowest price,
Right. Yeah,
like
yeah.
because
You
there's
got to
like
play with the numbers.
yeah, this gets into like the whole MSRP map shit where it's like, you know, certain industries have like, you know, like, or certain companies will have like that map pricing where it's like if you can't go below a certain price, but somehow people would just like, you know, be selling something worth $2,000 for like, you know, $1,000 or something, and then we just be like, how we can't beat these prices, they're too low, and
Yeah,
just like
like how
getting
are
the
they doing
traffic
that?
there. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
where
like you
some
can't.
people are subsidizing it with something else that's highly profitable, and then they kind
Yeah,
of take over the market because they're kind of like
yeah,
playing games because they got something else where they're making super profit, so they can
yeah,
subsidize coming in to take over that
yeah,
market and then creep the price back up, to
yeah.
knock people out and then creep up. It's like
And
it's
they're
a
better
cap.
with warehousing and shit too. Like, I mean, that's what I think a lot of people were like, they'd buy a bunch of gazebos and put them in a warehouse, and then they'd be
Mhm.
on Amazon selling these gazebos. And like, we were just like, you know, we're novices with this stuff. So we're like, wait a second, what's happening? Like, and then, you know, but we did it for a while. We sold a lot of stuff, but it was, you know, even the manufacturers were like still kind of like problematic too, because we'd have these reps and the reps would be inefficient. Like they were all working from home and stuff. So we'd sell something and then we'd call our rep and give them the, you know, say like, this is what we sold. And then the rep would like forget that they just forget that we sold like 10 of these gazebos.
And then they
And,
wouldn't send them. Then they
and
wouldn't
then
even
they
get
wouldn't
you.
send them. And I'm like, how the fuck did you? They're like, well, you have to prove that you sent us the invoice. I'm like, it's
Oh
in the
god,
email. Like it's right here. And so like we had these customers would be calling us saying like, where's my giant
where's your
gazebo?
stuff?
It should
Yeah.
be. And I'm like, or like one time there was this umbrella that was going to New York, and it was like this giant umbrella, and the guys like it was like a rich guy with like a maid, and the maid didn't want to come down to the lobby to get it, and like so they send it back across the country, and like we're just like, wow, this is stuff that was like way over our head and stuff. So
Yeah, it's a lot of. Yeah, you're starting to get into like Amazon.com, and they're going to be the king of that, because like
yeah,
they got the warehouse, they got the supply, they can knock the price down. We get to
yeah,
Walmart, the big Walmarts and guys like that, then it's
yeah,
hard. You can try to operate on the margin. You can
yeah.
try to be in there and get into it, but once you start, yeah, it gets into I'm in insurance, right? So I deal with actuaries and accountants,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
I actually design product. So I'm more
Hmm.
theoretical, but I design how those products work. So I don't got
Right.
to really deal with inventory. I'm more about how technically a life insurance or an annuity product works. So I don't really have to
Right.
care about moving widgets or moving
Yeah.
how much. I actually have to understand how the math of how it works.
Yeah.
And that's my capability, because I started with like mainframes and COBOL, then I went and
Hmm.
learned servers. Now I learned like
Hmm.
blockchain. So
Yeah.
I'm a tech, and I
Yeah.
got into it. And that's why I'm in the sense, because I get bored with working with these bankers and
Yeah.
insurance people, and I want to use that math to make music, because then that makes
Hmm.
art. So part of my
Right.
brain wants to take that math and go onto a Moog and play with
Yeah.
sine waves and ramp waves and pulse waves and actually make music.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where I have my fun, because it's like, hey, I can put that algorithm down and actually make some
Yeah.
fun or make
Yeah. That's
some
pretty.
new
Yeah.
wave, you know?
Yeah. And you don't like for your like band to show up. You have like all the stuff like around you, so you can just like turn around and like
Yeah,
start
it's
playing
right
it
in
and
my
stuff.
bedroom. I'm a bedroom producer, so I've got
Yeah,
my Juno and all this stuff hooked up. The one thing
yeah,
I decided is I don't like DAWs. I don't like digital audio workstations, so I use multi-tracks.
right,
So I like to capture my analog sense directly onto 24-track multi-tracks. Now I multi-track digital, but they grab my full like headroom. They can take the whole headroom of what my Moog deck puts out without
right,
compressing it, without clipping it, because it's not going into it. It's actually getting recorded to like a wave file. And so I can actually put down what I call like sound paintings.
okay,
Kind of like George Martin and Jimi Hendrix used to talk
mm-hmm.
about. If you take like, I think George Martin was in this documentary, and he was talking about how like the Beatles when they were in Berlin playing
Yeah,
like a real bar band, right?
yeah,
Like they initially recorded them like that, and
oh
then
yeah.
eventually you get to like Rubber Soul and you get to like
It's like Strawberry
Abbey
Fields
Road.
and shit like that.
Yeah, you start to see that. Oh, let's actually use the studio. Like Monet is an expressionist, right? Which actually, and he said one of the things that happened was George Martin used to do Peter Sellers comedy records, and on those
Okay.
Peter Sellers comedy records, they had backward tape loops, they had
Mm-hmm.
orchestras, they had multi tracks, they had
Yeah,
effects. And
yeah,
then, like, the Beatles actually were fans of what George Martin had been doing on those Peter Sellers records, and so that's
mm-hmm.
how that Sergeant Pepper, Rubber Soul
Yeah,
type of sound came to be because they said, "Oh, let's use the studio to enhance a rock band the same way you do these comedy records," and then that kind of changed the whole world because then,
yeah, yeah,
now people could actually use the studio to do something you can't do live. But you actually
yeah,
can go and make a studio record that doesn't represent what you could physically do live. It goes beyond what you could do live.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm a pretty big Beatles fan, I guess. Like, I know what you mean too. Like, a lot of their albums are kind of like they have a lot of comedic sort of songs too. That like you could
Yeah.
think like, why would they write that song? It's so wacky, like. And then it's like, oh, because it's kind of partially just hilarious or something, like some
Yeah, I
Rocky
think they know.
Raccoon or whatever. Like,
Yeah, if you think about like if you they were fans of what like Peter Sellers was so irreverent, right?
yeah,
And he was
yeah,
doing such advanced kind of comedy, and these guys are
yeah,
fans of him. And then
yeah,
George Martin, their producer, actually made those records. So then you
yeah.
can kind
Right.
of
That
see
makes sense. Yeah,
the synergy of
yeah.
how that came to happen.
Mhm.
You
Yeah,
know?
people probably don't know. I don't hear too many people talk about that. Like, I mean, I don't think I knew that about the Peter Sellers stuff, but it makes a
Yeah,
lot of sense when you think about just like the way that they're like all this stuff,
yeah.
like
There's a lot of comedy. There's a lot of comedy in the Beatles. People, there's all that psychedelic, but it's actually you can trace it to
yeah,
like using comedic, like tools in the
yeah,
music on top of
yeah,
the studio and the effects. And then
yeah,
just being taught how to be, better musicians because George Martin actually knew how to teach them as like a music teacher. So he's in there actually telling them how to pick the Beatle chord, like the fact that they should
yeah,
voice that chord to a different type of chord, and they weren't naturally going to do that until they had a
yeah,
guy like him around. And so
yeah,
that's like the big lesson when you start doing music history because I do a lot of interviews with bands and like you look at the recording engineers they work with, you look at the
hmm,
producers, and you look like a guy like a Brian Eno brings to the table,
yeah,
when he starts working with people. It's just
yeah,
the idea to like open things up and think about things in ways that you wouldn't thought about, and that's the enhancement that when you work with
yeah,
an engineer and a producer, and that's one thing, some of the kids lose when they're in the DAW because they don't think about maybe taking those techniques and bringing them home or using more analog preamps and analog controls on stuff. But there are some people who are into like vinyl. They're going retro again and trying to use
yeah,
more analog processing. So they'll
hmm,
have a digital signal, but they'll run it through a bunch of Neve like uh, processors at the end of the recording chain, or they'll use like solid state
yeah,
audio processors at the end of the chain to actually give
yeah,
it like a tape feel. They're actually machines
right,
that
yeah,
actually make your album sound like it's digital, but it puts it through a
no,
tape,
yeah,
and that
yeah.
sounds like it was done on a reel. But
Yeah, one of my bandmates is like a total like a gear
audiophile
nerd, and he's got all those tape things too, and like the compressors and the
emulators, yeah,
he's like talking
compressors, yeah,
about like Yeah, because he was talking. He's very like retro. Like we have like sort of a retro kind of sound to, and like he was talking about with like regards to like I guess the Ukraine thing. You know, like the
Yeah.
politically, he was like getting pissed off because he's like some like little widget or something was not going to be available. He's like, pretty soon the Russians are gonna stop selling this fucking widget. Like what? And he's like, yeah, this like he had to hoard a bunch of like little like what do you call it? Not transformers, but some kind of like little
Yeah, I actually have a company called Soyuz Microphones, and it's a
yeah,
Russian analog preamp. It's kind of like
yeah,
Neve stuff. And
yeah.
I have this thing, and they got, because of the Ukraine thing, you can't really get a lot of Soyuz stuff. It's actually a
Yeah.
company called Soyuz Microphone, and they make these
Okay.
analog preamps, and they're so
Yeah.
interesting because they're hand built, and they don't.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I have, it doesn't have any controls. You just plug your
Okay.
mic into it, and you have to either like what it does or you don't. Right, so it's
Yeah.
basically like a Neve, but with no controls on it. It just like you either
Hmm.
like the way it adds warmth to your thing, or you say, "Well, I don't like it." But it's
Right.
kind of a magical thing. If you dig it, there's
Yeah.
wow, this is like a magic box. You don't even have any settings. You just hook your mic up to it, and then
Yeah.
pop it into your thing, and it just gives you all this headroom, gives you all this
Right.
warmth, and that's the kind of stuff. That's the kind of magic devices people are always looking for. They're looking for
Mm-hmm.
that magic preamp that's gonna make your kick drum sound better, right? It's gonna make your
Yeah.
snare sound better, make your vocal sound better, make your guitar
Yeah.
sound, more punchy or more,
Something.
raucous. Like, yeah, it depends on what you're going for, but there's little tools when you get into
Yeah.
sound, that you can
Yeah.
get real obsessive about.
Yeah. Like it's like the Led Zeppelin recording in the castle or the in that
Oh yeah,
house with the like the one mic or one mic on the ceiling, one mic on the kick or something. And it's
yeah.
got
There's
that.
a lot of techniques. Like you said, like Elton John did Yellow Brick Road in a house. Um,
Right.
the,
Yeah.
if you think about like Exile on Main Street was done in a house in France,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
was in the basement and it was super hot.
Hmm.
And Keith was
Right.
always going outside right, and doing other things.
Yeah. Yeah, I
But
saw the classic album thing for Elton John, like that album, the Yellow Brick
yeah,
Road thing. Yeah, pretty cool
yeah.
stuff. Like I love that stuff. Yeah.
Well,
Watching
I
and
like the
learning about
fact
it.
that they said like in that episode, Ellen said, "Yeah, everything's like second, third take. We didn't
Yeah.
obsess about trying to make it perfect." And I always try to
Yeah.
tell kids like, if you start going on to the 10th and the 20th take, I'm like, you know what? The further you
Yeah.
get away from the first takes, the
Yeah.
less honest this song is. Like, because your
Yeah. Yeah.
first or second or third take, maybe it has an error in the vocal, maybe it has a key
Hmm.
change error, whatever. But
Yeah.
it actually sounds better on version 3 than version 44. And I
Right.
will actually tell them I'd rather take 33, version 3 and say that's the one I want to go with because you're obsessing about trying to make something perfect and you're actually wrecking it.
Yeah.
You actually
Yeah.
got to keep it better, closer to its original intent.
Yeah.
I've been a big fan of uh, a lot of guys that were into that kind of thinking back in the
Yeah. There's a
day,
lot of
like a
people
lot
like
of the
that.
60s bands, Frank Zappa, was Buddy Rich.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm never going to play the solo the same way. He was
Right.
like, I'm just
Yeah.
bored. Like there was a interview, and they said, well, you're technically capable of playing that song solo exactly the same. He said, but he said, it's
Hmm.
boring. I'm never going to
Yeah.
do that. I'm never going to do that. And the people are like, well, why not? It's like, because that's not interesting to me. He just didn't want to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. Wouldn't he fire people if they didn't like practice or something?
Yeah. He was
Remember?
like, I mean, he used to be able to actually write instrumentation for orchestras. To actually
Right.
write the sheet
Yeah.
music. But then when
Yeah.
he went
Yeah.
to play his part, they
Yeah.
would be like, well, are you writing that down? It's like, no.
just
So
just me.
so
I'm exempt from this system.
he
Yeah.
was exempt, but he would write down exactly what everybody else's part's supposed to be. But they're like, I'm
Yeah.
exempt.
And if they fucked it up, he'd be like, "You're out."
Yeah. He was like a taskmaster. But I mean, he's so brilliant, he gets away with it.
Yeah. Yeah, of
You
course.
get
I
guys like
mean,
Prince was like that too. If people didn't
yeah.
hit the note
Well,
right,
they're like
you're done.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. And like what's amazing too is like Dweezil.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
his son, like basically like fucking he's kind of like Jason Bonham. He's just like he's like note for
yeah.
note, he's just like he can play the
He
whole
can
thing.
play
Yeah, it was
all
just
his
like,
father's stuff. I saw that. Like he
yeah,
can do
yeah,
it like note for note. That's like Bonham's
yeah,
kid can do that
yeah,
too. You're like,
yeah.
damn.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, and even like Ringo's kid is playing for the Who. You know.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's out there.
Yeah. So I
Yeah, they
mean,
all had
yeah,
like musical kids.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
George had a musical kid. Paul's got a musical kid. John's got a musical kid. Two musical kids.
To me, yeah, yeah. They like Julian. I haven't seen Sean Lennon stuff for a while,
Yeah,
but
but he was
yeah.
in
I mean,
like Sean's been out there for a while too. Like he was in like Chibo Matto. Do you know Chibo Matto?
oh no, I didn't know where he went. If I gotta check
I
it
think he
out
was
then.
like played bass in Chibo Matto is one of those like crazy like it's like with I think there's a Japanese singer and like it's like kind of like prog punk, just very
Oh, cool. I
spastic.
like that.
Yeah,
So
like
I didn't know
Chibo
where he
Matto's
went.
crazy.
I
Yeah,
should
he
check
was
it
in,
out.
but he
That's
also does kind of sad kind of like you know, like kind of
emo, emo type
emo,
stuff.
slow kind of stuff, whatever. But Chibo Matto, I swear he's in Chibo Matto and like but yeah, and then Julian, you know, he had that one song that was like pretty big and then he kind of disappeared.
Yeah, he totally
Um,
disappeared. I don't know where he went, but
but he came back not long ago and he did like a version of I don't know what it was, probably Imagine or something like
oh, he did
uh
that.
yeah, he did some kind of like tribute
The
thing or
Beatles.
something like to the yeah, for
I've
that
been
song.
I've been going crazy into the new Revolver release. That
Oh yeah.
yeah, they put out a big edition of Revolver with all these like outtakes that you never heard before.
Oh
And
yeah.
I'm a big archivist, so I mean, I love
Yeah.
listening to like Hendrix stuff like that, Zepp stuff
Yeah.
like that. You know, the
Yeah.
band. Like I'm big into the Bob Dylan and the band, like the
Mhm.
original
Mhm.
basement tapes. That
Yeah.
was like, yeah, I was like, I've got like this 10-hour version of that. Right, there's the
Whoa.
original version from like '75, and then I got this 10-hour version with got like Quinn the Eskimo and all this stuff on it. And
Yeah.
it's actually got Dylan's version of Quinn. Like everybody heard the Man for Man, but
Yeah.
hardly anybody's probably ever heard the Dylan version of Quinn, which
Right.
actually
Yeah.
is played with the band, with Robbie
Right.
Robertson and all guys, and it's fantastic. I'm like, wow, like, and that was all done like in Big Pink in the basement,
Right.
you
This
know.
is on the 10-hour basement tapes
Yeah,
thing.
that one's like it's just a good lesson for any like I always try to show kids when I'm a producer, like I like the rawness of what the band did
Yeah.
at Big Pink. And I tell
Yeah.
people if they start getting too out of control, it's like take it back a step and try to do it like that. Right. Try to actually be more organic, try to be more loose and
Mhm.
try to do it like a bootleg. Because
Mhm.
you find that you get a lot of really good music out of that rather
Yeah.
than sit with jaw trying to make it perfect, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you know what? I like before I got on the podcast, I was like doing a drum track for an album I'm doing right now. It's like a it's like this friend of mine who is like a she's sort of like a she's like a Muslim punk fitness chick in Toronto and like she's
Like
got this style that's
positives.
like she's very like
Positive.
kind of like she's into like PJ Harvey and stuff and so the drums
Oh,
are kind
yeah,
of like
yeah.
very like I have to like kind of play the drums in a certain way.
Mhm.
But it's kind of fun because like I'll sit down, I like drag my like you know my Scarlet Solo over. I have a Scarlet Solo, which is like
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
if you know it. And I'm
Yeah,
like
I know
so
what that
I'm
is.
I put it down, I like plug it in. I'm like I've heard the song like once, and then I'm like I'll figure it out, and then I get on there and I'm like try to work it out, and then for like half I'm like sweating trying to come up with something, and then like I basically like I play the song and then I'm done. I'm just like I'll do it a few times and like I think I got it, but I just like make it up and then I'm like that's like what ends up being like on the recording.
Alright.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I just like making
My
it up, you know?
I like stream of consciousness. My style lately is,
Yeah,
I've got tools where I could be on like an MPC, like an Akai MPC, and I could put something
yeah,
down like Ableton, but I don't like it. I like to
yeah.
go over to all these synths and just put
Mm-hmm.
my multi-track on, and I actually go live on my Facebook through this channel, and I do a rehearsal live, and I track it
Yeah, right.
onto my Zoom, and my Zoom actually will put down a stem for every
Mm,
line that's going into it. So
yeah,
I've got multiple synths going into it, drum machines going into it, bass lines coming off of Moogs. So everything gets
nice.
tracked. So after the
Yeah,
fact, I do an hour. I've actually got all these stems that were played like live,
right.
and then I can go
Yeah,
back and pull out like, oh, what I find is like the last 15 minutes of the rehearsal, I finally gelled on an idea, and
yeah,
that's like the last 15 minutes is the song. And for my
right.
last
Yeah,
album,
yeah.
that's what I did. I spent 2 years and I did tons of hour-long rehearsals that I did live for my fans. And then like
Yeah.
most of the songs are the last 15, 20 minutes of a rehearsal where I finally zoned in on what the
Yeah.
song was. And then I
Yeah. Yeah.
actually put it down. And I
Right.
feel like that feels more like when I used to play with my bands, when I had 4 or
Yeah.
5 people, in
Yeah.
in a recording room doing it live. And,
Right.
I just found that if I'll play with them and maybe do overdubs, but like if I
Yeah.
remember, like the Who's Next was recorded in a ballroom. They
Okay. Yeah.
recorded live a lot of those tracks in ballroom in London, and then people went
Okay.
in and overdubbed a bunch of things.
Right.
And I think that is still a really good way to do things. Do something live and then go back and overdub wherever you want. But it just
Yeah.
captures, like, if you think about Who's Next, the way it sounds, it sounds like it was live because it basically
Yeah.
was.
Right. Yeah. The foundation's live for sure.
Yeah, the foundation of the whole album is like live, and there's a lot of bands like the Allman Brothers, Cream, like
Yeah.
Derek and the Dominoes. That even the Stones. That's a lot of
Yeah.
what they did, and there's
Yeah.
something about live recording that it feels more honest.
Yeah. Yeah. You get the take or whatever. It's like you can kind of that was a good take of those people doing that
Yeah,
song, right? Like, and
yeah,
then you
yeah.
add a few little riffs on top of it, and it's like perfect, because
Yeah,
like
that's all you
maybe you
need.
couldn't
You
have.
don't have to go obsess on the grid trying to
Yeah.
get everything on a Pro Tools or Logic. And I see so many kids that, like, they're obsessing about making it
Yeah.
perfect. They're trying to. My
Yeah.
whole thing is like, do you think Keith Richards would try to make that perfect? Do you think Keith
Yeah.
Richards would go back into Exile on Main Street and say, "Oh, I got to take that riff out and redo it"? Like, no,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
put it down
No.
and like that's the one. That's it.
Yeah. And it might be like a little bit of a rough around the edges, but like that's what makes it cool, right?
Yeah, but
Like,
that's all about Keith. The fact that it's hard to put a BPM on the way Keith plays because
yeah. Or
he's kind of like he's really kind of in his own world, and you
well,
kind of
yeah, and
had
same
to.
with Charlie too, right? Charlie's
Yeah,
like kind of like got that weird style where he's like, he's got the jazz chops or whatever, and he's
yeah,
kind
he's
of
like a
like
jazz, like a
not on
metal
the,
a
not
little
on a
bit.
click track or anything. Like
Yeah,
one time a guy was like, we were recorded with this one guy, and he was like a younger guy, and fresh out of like recording school, and he was putting us on the click, and my buddy was like, can you just turn the click off? And he's like, because he was doing the
I,
drum track, and the guy's like, no, you have to play to this click. And he's like, well, it's our
no,
recording. And
no,
he's
you
like,
don't.
no, you have to play to the click. We're like, no, we don't want to. And then he basically had like a nervous breakdown, and then
Yeah, I
that was
ran
it.
into this guy. Like he said he wanted. He's a guy from like who he was from, like he was from Sweden, and he
Okay.
said he liked my music. I
Yeah.
never use a click track. Like, I use Moogs that have
Yeah.
they're on a clock, but I purposely might have my LFO running weird,
Yeah.
where it actually kicks
Right.
in and does weird things, right? So it's not
Right.
exactly full 4 on the floor. It's 3/4.
Yeah.
It's not. It's like jumping around, and I
Right.
purposely like to do that because I like jazz. Like, I like fusion.
Mm.
Like, I like
Yeah.
bebop. I like stuff that kind of goes off and comes back. And
Yeah.
this guy, I said, well, I told him, like, so you like Peg, you like Ghost Music, you know what I'm about. And then he tried to
Right.
put me on a click track, and I'm like, I ain't never doing that.
Yeah.
And as I,
What did he?
as I told him, like, I thought you knew what I was about. I don't use click tracks. I don't do it.
Yeah.
And then he
So
was
what happened?
obsessing. I just had to stop working with him because he just kept on complaining that I kept on doing
Yeah.
timing changes. As I said, that's part of what I do. I mean, if you listen to
Yeah.
Yes or Genesis or Funkadelic, there's timing changes. That's what it is. There's
Yeah.
changes. It's progressive
Yeah.
rock.
Yeah.
Progressive
Yeah. A
rock,
lot
that's
of
what it
argument.
does.
People like have that argument. Like every once in a while, I'll have an argument with people about that exact thing, and they're like, "You can't. No, you have to stay. Like it has to be on the click, or it has to be like very consistent." I'm like, what? No, it doesn't.
You don't.
And then they're just like these people usually just are like, what the fuck? Yes, it does. Like, and I'm like,
Yeah,
no, like,
get over
so you
it.
never really get past that argument with certain people because they're just like, this guy's crazy. Like, he thinks you have
Well,
to
I mean, the
you go off
problem
the
is that,
click
like,
or
a lot of the music that if you live in the DAW, it
yeah,
kind of forces you into this, like, computer zone. Like, it's computer driving you. Say, keep that BPM the same, keep it in the same
yeah,
key. It starts warning you saying you're not. And I'm like,
yeah,
that's why I like multi-tracks. I used to have
yeah,
a Fostex and a Tascam, and I had like
right,
a Tascam 8 tracker. and my band, we'd play it till we got it. And if it
Mm-hmm.
had a feel, I was listening to bands like the Replacements, Joy
Right.
Division,
Yeah.
Husker and those
Yeah.
bands, Black Flag. They weren't on a click track. They
Yeah.
didn't do that. They just went into it and they did it and they put it down,
Yeah.
and that's the way it is. It's like, Camper Van Beethoven. It's like, are they on a click track? No. It's just
Yeah.
like they put it down, and that's the way it is. And these kids, they're trying to do what they hear these massive producers doing. And
Yeah.
it's like they try to tell them, like, these guys are repeating their loops because they get. They keep on
Yeah.
putting the same loops on other people's records because they get the money every time they
Yeah.
reuse their own material. So you're just
Right.
hearing this stuff and making you think that that's what music should be, and it's not. That's not what music should be.
Yeah, that's why I have trouble with like certain say trap. I've heard a lot of trap beats. I've heard enough trap beats to for my whole life. Just like I'm just sort of. And one time I was I was talking some shit about what is it, dubstep or something. I was talking shit about dubstep, but then my friend was like, "You don't know real dubstep," and I'm like, "I don't." And he's like, "No," and I'm like, "Okay." So he gave me this mix of like all these older dubstep people. I'm like, "Is this dubstep?" He's like, "Yeah, this is like before Skrillex became popular or something." And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, this is what dubstep was before." I don't know. So you always have to be like educated and stuff. Like, I don't know if I can be kind of judgmental, but I also I'm I don't know if I'm humble, but I'll admit if I'm wrong or just that was a stupid opinion or whatever. So it depends.
My main thing is I just don't like people who aren't adventurous.
Yeah.
I grew up with bands like it's like Sid Barrett's Pink Floyd.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And listening to like a band like Sun Ra. Like if you think
Yeah.
about Sun Ra, and they're very experimental, right? And
Yeah.
the early funkadelic, we got songs that are like 20 minutes long, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
people, and then even like the Velvet Underground, like the white heat.
Yeah.
It's like a
Yeah.
20-minute white noise thing. Like I
Yeah.
was into experimental stuff, even to the point like a Big Star, Alex Chilton's Big Star Third, which
Yeah.
is kind of like
Yeah. Yeah.
Neil Young's Tonight's the Night, where it's got
Yeah.
this ramshackle kind of like,
Mm.
like sometimes your voice is a little out of tune, but it was like emotional.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you think
Yeah.
about Tonight's the Night,
Mhm.
it's like because Neil was like hurt because people in his band died, and
Right.
he's like relaying this story and this pain in it. And he
Yeah.
called it like part of the Ditch trilogy because he said, I was trying to be so perfect on Harvest. And then
Yeah.
I go into like Time Fades Away, Tonight's the Night, On the Beach. And he called it the Ditch trilogy because like I didn't want to be that Nashville perfect singer. I wanted to
Yeah.
go into something else. And I
Yeah.
always found that those three records in that Ditch trilogy actually were more honest. That really showed me what Neil could do. And I'm like, yeah,
Mhm.
that's what I like.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was my
What do you
opinion. Maybe some people like Harvest better. I don't know.
What do you think his didn't he do like at least one electronic album?
Yeah, well, he was kind of crazy when he was on Geffen. He went and did
Yeah.
stuff just to piss him off.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like this is like
So-
the 80s, right? He was doing the
yeah, so
trans or whatever it's called.
he did a rockabilly record. He went and did an electronic record. He did all
Yeah.
these records that weren't commercial when he got this big contract from Geffen. And
Yeah.
I think he'd come off of Zuma, and he'd come off off of Rust Never Sleeps, and then he gets this contract, and Geffen is thinking, well, I'm going to get another Zuma, or I'm going to get another Rust Never Sleeps, and then he
Right.
gets everybody's rocking.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And he gets this electronic album, and Neil saying, well, I just wanted to change, And then when he comes back to Warner's Reprise,
Yeah.
he gives everybody Freedom, which sounds just like Zuma. It's like a Zuma type
Right.
of record. It's back to like typical Crazy Horse type of thing,
Yeah.
I decided to come back to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And didn't he also have didn't he invent have some kind of sound format thing
Oh yeah, he created this like thing to go against the iPod because he thought it was crap. And it was,
right. Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
because it compresses the sound so bad. And their AirPods are bad too because they take all the headroom out of the sound.
Yeah.
So if when you send that to somebody and they're thinking they're gonna get this high end device, and it's like killing the sound. It's like if you put a lot of time into mastering, like
Mhm.
his device was better, but nobody bought it. But
Right. Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
was it
but
like what it was good though? Like I had never heard it
yeah,
or
well, it
anything.
actually had more bandwidth. It basically had less compression, so it was
Yeah.
closer to a WAV file, closer to what you hear on vinyl or tape
Yeah.
than anything
Yeah.
that was on an MP3 or an or like an AAC. It just
Yeah.
was technically wider, so it had more headroom. And you could, if you listen to it on your headphones, you could hear all this stuff that wasn't there if you listen to it on
Yeah.
an iPhone or an Android or any of the
Right.
modern cell phones. Compress super
Yeah.
bad, but that's part of the problem.
Like an Og Vorbis
But
or whatever that thing is. Or is it Tide? That's like Tide's the Tidal. Is that the platform with the high end audio?
yeah, Tidal got the best audio right now, supposedly. Um,
Yeah.
but because they care about it. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, kids are getting vinyl and they're getting tape again, just
Hmm.
because you can hear stuff. I mean, I go back to some of my vinyl records and I'm listening to my Motown. And I'm like, yeah, I'm listening to my Chess records, my James Brown records,
Yeah.
like my
Hmm.
78s. And,
Hmm.
and that stuff hasn't even been brought over, to the
Right.
digital world. There's a bunch of stuff
Right.
I've got with James Brown and the Famous Flames that they never even brought over. And, I got it from a pop. And
Oh yeah.
I'm like, wow, that stuff is just, I listen to it on my vinyl.
Yeah. Keep it on vinyl. Don't digitize.
Nah. Yeah, with some of that
Leave it
stuff
there.
will get lost. The kids won't. It really doesn't represent what it is. So
Yeah.
sometimes.
Well,
Plus,
yeah.
you need to listen to it so you don't hop around. You just listen
Yeah.
to the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that's my problem is like my beef is just that people are too they listen to things because they like want to be cool or they want to be like make things because they want to be popular and they don't listen to things just because it's like it sounds good or there's like a the spirit of the thing. They're all kind of just clout chasers like fucking that's
Yeah,
why
or go to buy a Ferrari. It's like
yeah
if you're making music so you can buy a Ferrari
yeah
or a Lambo, it's
yeah
like then you're
it's
not
kind of funny.
necessarily going to do what John Lydon did or
Yeah,
Joe did.
no, hell no.
Or like Paul Westerberg did, like or even like a Liz Fair. Would you do Exile and Guyville? She didn't get a
Yeah.
Ferrari out of that, but she
Yeah,
did it
no,
because she
yeah.
wanted to do it, because you know,
Yeah. Most people don't know that, they don't know that Johnny Rotten was like had a whole other career, right? After the
yeah.
Sex Pistols. They're just like, he was at what? Didn't he die or something? Like, no,
Well, he
he's
went and
still
did that
going. Like,
Public Image Limited, which was like an electronic version of the Pistols.
yeah.
But yeah, which is it's not that bad record. I like Metal Box. Metal Box is pretty good.
Yeah, it's cool.
They
I
hit some
like all
really
those kind of
cool.
weird angular fucking proto
Yeah, he did
punk
some
weird
really
stuff.
strange new wave. It's like Joy Division type stuff. It's like I love Joy Division. I like what they were doing
Yeah.
before
Hmm.
they became New Order,
Yeah.
because they
Right.
had like this post punk sound. It was still kind of punky, still kind of Clash like, but then they
Hmm.
introduced those new wave forms that you end up hearing from The Cure and even New
Yeah.
Order and Depeche Mode. But the kind of like Love Will Tear Us Apart, that type of
Yeah.
arrangement is the first
Yeah.
time you really hear that is in Joy
Yeah.
Division. It's like the first
Yeah.
example, like 79. You hear this
Yeah.
sound that you'll hear The Cure doing later, and they're like the
Yeah.
first ones to kind of do it.
Yeah, they like perfected it back then or something. I like them when they were like before, like when they were like Warsaw. They were like they sounded like they were like
More of a punk band.
a
Yeah,
punk
yeah,
band. But he didn't even sound like him the way he sounds on Closer or anything. Like his voice changed a lot
change. Yeah,
and just he became more like he had that weird kind of crooner voice that he has. And then I have this book that's like what's it called? Something of living or something. It's like something of and
Joy
basically
Division.
it's like a book about it's like about Joy Division and then they go into New Order. But it's like the kind of like the tour dates and stuff. And it's a cool book because it goes like it's like Joy Division, Joy Division, Joy Division, New Order. Like it's like there's like
jumps.
they just jumps because like I guess it was the day before they left or something, right? I forget.
Yeah, because he was supposed to go on tour, and then he killed himself. But
it was like literally like that day or that week where he's like they're going to go to America to get famous, and then he like dies, and then they still went to America, and started booking their shows and then they were a different band.
Yeah, they became
Right.
and the thing is, like, a lot of people just love Joy Division. They prefer it. Though New
Yeah.
Order has some really great songs, and I
I
admit
love
they
New
do.
Order, yeah. I
But
love them
there's
both.
something about like Disorder. The song
Yeah.
Disorder to me is like a perfect type of post punk song, and
Yeah.
it's something that I always really like. That I mean, that's why I like Replacements, and I ended
Hmm.
up liking Who's to Do because I
Yeah.
like the way that kind of attitude. You got it
Yeah.
with Nirvana, but I thought Who's to Do was like fantastic. I don't know if you really ever got a Bob Mould, Grant Hart about Who's to Do, but they
Yeah.
had this
Yeah.
sound in Minneapolis. It's like this power pop punk that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
so, and the drumming was so interesting,
It's so
because Grant
fast. It's
Hart
so
could
fast
sing.
and yeah.
Yeah, he could do
Yeah.
this really intricate, like, percussion, all kinds of like bells and other things going on with the cymbals and
Yeah.
singing.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
he's
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
doing very complicated, some not as simple as like a Ramones. He's actually doing something a little bit more. And I'm
Yeah, for
like, wow.
sure.
Yeah, I'm like that to
Yeah.
me used to drive me
Yeah.
because
He
I
used
was
to
in the
like at some
Moon.
point. Say again.
I was into Keith
What?
Moon. I loved the fact that
Oh.
Keith Moon pretty much soloed through the whole song, and
Yeah.
Pete kept
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. He just was like flying around doing
He's
whatever.
just
Like.
flying through the song with Edward soloing, like the whole rhythm section is
Yeah.
soloing, and
Yeah.
and
Very.
actually
Yeah.
Pete is doing the rhythm.
Yeah. Pretty wild. Like they were like a wild kind of band.
It's like early
Um.
punk. So people used to say, well, I like that like Neil Young is the grandfather of punk. But I think
Yeah.
Pete Townsend is the grandfather of
Yeah.
punk, and like Moon and so because that band is super punk. If you
Yeah.
listen to early Who, man, they're just
Yeah.
sound like a punk band. I mean, like Who Sell Out, My Generation. Those records
Yeah.
are very got a punk attitude. It's
Yeah.
pretty much, then when they did Tommy, then they became more progressive, and then they
Yeah.
got into like the rock operas with Cartagena. But their roots is like a very power, power band. I mean, it's like very
Yeah.
aggressive, highly intimidating rock band.
I was into the early Who more. Like I actually am not I'm not a Tommy
No,
or
not the Tommy or
Quadrophenia.
Cartagena, like the early
Not really.
stuff.
Like not. I never like. Maybe I just haven't got it yet. But I was always more into like the early Who stuff. The stuff you're talking about. The more like just like kind of garage band
With
kind of
Happy
style.
Jack, songs like Happy Jack and I Can See for
Mhm.
Miles and
Yeah.
yeah,
Boris the Spider.
yeah, the singles, like when they had like if you get there, like there's an album that has nothing but singles.
Yeah.
And when they
Yeah.
were like a singles band before they did Tommy. And
Yeah.
even the Who Sell Out is a
Yeah.
fantastic, it's a concept album. I don't know if you ever
Yeah.
got it, but you only got My
I think so.
Generation. It's a really good record because My Generation is a fabulous song. But the Sell
Yeah.
Out album is this idea where they had these ads running through the
Yeah.
record,
That album. Yeah.
like
Yeah. I remember
Heinz
now.
baked beans and all these like
The
road
deodorant
sounds,
thing.
bass strings and deodorant. Um,
Yeah.
but the songs are just phenomenal, and they're
Yeah.
not they're just different than the Beatles, different than the Kings, different than the Stones.
Yeah.
It's like you can say, well, there's the British invasion, but the Who have their own place. So they kind of had this niche. It wasn't like anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm a pretty like, I'm a Who fan. I guess they made an album like a couple years ago or something.
Yeah,
Like
they
they
had a
came
brand
back.
new album. They came back, but to me, like without
Yeah.
Entwistle, when they lost Moon, I was like
Yeah.
like I mean, I listened to those. It's hard, and I listened to Face Dances,
Hmm.
and I got like The Wire, but I didn't get the
Hmm.
last album because it's like, the Who to me, I'm still stuck in like the Who
Yeah.
Sell Out, My Generation, and those records are, to me like that's like the Who I know, but
Yeah. Yeah. It's easy to kind of do that. Like I always try to like keep up with these bands because it's like they mean a lot to me. But also, like remember when the Beatles did that one, like the bird, what's that? The song that came out in like the 90s.
oh
Um,
yeah,
and I
the
was just like,
Wonderful Song.
fuck this shit. Like, even though like it wasn't even a bad song, but like
No,
immediately
but
everyone's just like, what is it? Like what is what is this? Oh,
Well,
it's shit. Like
yeah, I like to find like old Hendrix songs I don't know about. But
yeah,
I like to find the fact that they find like black gold. This mythic Hendrix thing called black gold. Um,
yeah, I haven't heard
oh,
that, but
but black gold is like this thing where he did like an acoustic album,
oh
and he
yeah,
did it like on a 4-track in a hotel on a 12
okay,
string guitar, and all the
oh nice,
songs are acoustic. And
yeah,
people have been wanting it, and the
yeah,
state's been creeping the songs out like one at a time on like compilations. But the
yeah,
real diehard fans, we know there's like 10 songs they did in
mm-hmm.
this hotel on a Fostack type of on a reel to
Yeah,
reel,
yeah,
and it's like it's supposed to be like phenomenal. If you've ever seen the
mm-hmm.
Hendrix movie where he actually does he has this hat on, it like really awesome hat, a red jacket, and he did this 12-string guitar song that's like fantastic. Like him just not being unplugged, the
Mm-hmm.
way he plays is like it's just unbelievable to hear that, and to have a whole
Yeah,
album like that is like something
yeah,
people have been wanting the estate to do, because it's just we give you a different picture of him, like at Woodstock when he
yeah,
did that performance. It's a different view of him, and if it
mm-hmm.
exists, then people should hear it, because I just want to have the full picture of who he was, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Who was I was arguing with someone about him, like talking about Band of Gypsies, and someone was like, my friend, I think, was like, that was like before the Experience, right? I'm like,
No,
no.
it's
And
after. It's
he's
after
like, I'm like,
70.
it's after. He's like, so
Yeah.
Machine Gun was not before. I'm like, no. And he's like,
Machine
yes,
Gun's
it
like
was. I'm like,
it's in the 70s. What's late 60s, 69 going into 70.
yeah,
There's some concerts that happened like during New Year's with the
right.
Gypsies. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was like he had kind of wanted to get into funk and get
Yeah.
into like where Curtis Mayfield was going.
Yeah.
And if he had stayed alive, he probably would have gone in the direction he was going. It was into fusion and the
Yeah.
funk, and he was
Yeah.
going in that in his own way. But the Gypsies were an example of him kind of taking in a soul fusion funk type of sound that
Mm-hmm.
still had his like Hendrixian psychedelic type of stuff going on,
Yeah.
and it was a really good kind of vision of where he could have gone, if he'd been
Yeah.
allowed to keep on going that way. It's just, Machine Gun is like
Yeah.
considered like one of his classics, because it's different
Yeah.
a style than what the Experience
Yeah.
did. It's a different
Yeah.
drummer. It's not the same drummer. Different
Yeah.
bass players. Billy Cox on bass. It's not
Yeah.
Noel. It's a
Right.
different drummer. You have another voice singing with the Gypsies, and it just expanded what he could do. I always
Yeah.
was really impressed anytime he tried to reach out and work with other people.
Yeah. Well, he didn't it for a while. Like, I guess, like, was it that Neptune album or something? Like, at some
Yeah,
point there was like more material kept coming out, and I'm like,
yeah. There was
was it
a
just like,
final album was supposed to be called First Rays of the New Rising Sun.
yeah,
That was
right.
the album that was supposed to be after Electric Ladyland. They finally
Well,
put it out,
yeah,
the vision of what they thought he wanted, because he had written down what he wanted, and
yeah,
they put it out like back in the late 90s. It's called First
yeah,
Rays and the New Rising Sun. He actually had that written down on a piece of paper, saying that
yeah,
that's what he wanted the album to be. So they actually
yeah,
went through this state, and they found handwritten notes and different wrote
yeah,
notes of like the order of the songs. It has like Angel and Drifting and Easy Rider. And
yeah,
when you listen to the full picture of what that was, it's a very good record. It's like a really good follow up to Electric Lady. There's
yeah,
some
yeah.
parts of it that are missing that they
Mm-hmm.
didn't include that would have made it even better. Songs like
Mm-hmm.
Cherokee Mist and stuff like that. There's some really good songs that they didn't put on it that I think should have been on it. But if they put those, it could have matched Electric Lady in terms
Wasn't
of
that?
like what he had in the can. But
Yeah, wasn't that his, like? Wasn't that studio, like? Was that his studio, like Electric Lady
Electric Lady he
studio?
was building. Yeah,
Oh, that
Electric
was,
Lady. He
yeah.
built Electric Lady with the money he was touring from. He actually toured real heavy from 69 into 70, because he
Mm-hmm.
got into debt to build that studio in New York. He
Oh,
specifically
yeah.
was building like a 24-track studio that had the latest gear, because if
Mm-hmm.
you listen to Electric Lady, he had gotten very expansive. He had started getting into heavy multi-tracking, and I
Yeah.
think he had only been able to do 16, and he wanted to get to 24, and he
Right.
wanted the latest gear, and he was a real gearhead. He was
Yeah, he was
using
like a
all these
studio rat.
pedals. Yeah, he was using everything he could get. Like anything he could
Yeah.
get, he'd jump on a harpsichord, he'd jump on a synth, he'd jump on anything that was around. And so he was
Yeah.
trying to build what he thought was the future. I mean, he was hanging out with fusion jazz artists. He was hanging
Hmm.
out with there was a black band, I always forget the name of it. He did a song with a famous uh there was a I always forget his name. I mean, it escapes me, but there actually is a
Mm.
song of him dealing with like this guy Love. His last name is Love. He's a black
Oh,
singer. I think
oh,
you
Arthur
maybe
Lee.
Arthur Lee. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a song of him. He did a duet with Arthur Lee on an original song,
Oh,
and I have it
nice.
in my Hendrix archive, and it's
Oh,
from
cool.
Love, and it's fantastic.
Oh,
And it just
cool.
shows like how he could blend into things and do things that people probably didn't expect. I mean, that song in
Yeah.
itself,
I
he's
never heard
like,
that.
yeah, it's a fantastic song. I mean, because he's like, he's singing, Arthur Lee's singing, and he's doing the guitar, and he
Yeah.
actually does a little bit of background singing. But I'm like, he was very in the last year of his life, he was doing tons of work. He
Yeah.
wasn't just like falling off the universe like Morrison. He actually was
Yeah.
working. He was
Yeah.
working
Yeah.
up till that day he died. He
Yeah.
wrote some lyrics that day. They
Yeah.
found him in a
Yeah.
diary.
Didn't and he just died from like it was like alcohol, wasn't it, or something?
Yeah,
Like
it
didn't
was
he
like
just
an
like choke?
alcohol and sleeping pills. He
Yeah.
had been in London because his girlfriend got accused of trafficking some substances, and he was going to
Hmm.
have to show up. And he was
Right.
very. The stories are that he was very nervous about it.
Mm.
He had seen what like the kind of treatment that Keith Richards had for heroin bust and stuff like that, and he was very
Yeah.
scared that they were going to try to bust him like Keith, and he didn't know if he had the power that Keith had to get out of it. He was
Right.
saying, "Well, these guys might not let me get out of it."
Yeah. I'm
So
fucked.
he was,
Yeah.
yeah, so he was real like in a bad state, thinking like the worst was going to happen. So it's just a bad situation to happen. But
Yeah. It was like the
you know, I,
asphyxiation thing. One of those like totally like random kind of like that didn't need to happen. That was just like, you
yeah,
know,
I mean, such a great genius. I mean, somebody that was still putting material out. It's like it's like people want to say he was all done. He was like 27. He wasn't done.
yeah.
He was like still like actively writing, and some people want to act like he burned out. And if you look at the amount of output he was doing up to like
Yeah.
the month before he died, it
Yeah.
doesn't look like
Well,
somebody was trying to like leave the world. It was like
yeah,
they were
yeah.
still trying to kick ass.
Yeah, like fucking like like Cobain or whatever. It's like Kurt Cobain used to say stuff like, "I've done it all. Like I don't think I can. I don't know where to go from here."
Yeah, he
Like he
thought he was
was
done.
he thought he was done. It's
He
just like, what am I gonna do next? Like there's nothing else to do. It's like that's like the opposite of Hendrix. Hendrix is like work ethic. Like like wasn't there's no way he would have stopped at all.
no, I mean he had it's like Mitch Mitchell was waiting in a rehearsal area where he
Mm.
had booked time. And when he
Yeah.
died, he was he was like he couldn't believe it because
Like
he
what?
was actually
Yeah.
sitting on his drum set in a waiting for him to show up.
Yeah. That would be
So it was like they
trippy.
were getting ready to write something, and so it wasn't like he was done. He
Yeah.
wasn't going around saying he was done. He actually booked time in
Yeah.
London to do something. So it was like, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
And some people just like they keep go like I mean some people are very prolific and like they don't have like these sort of like mood swings where they're like I just don't have it, nothing's going on and I have no ideas, like I don't that some people are like that, other people are just like for me I just feel like I always have some idea of that I'm going to try something, like
yeah.
so if I just sit here
But
and like wait a second, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll do this.
well, I think
Even if it's not a
like
great idea,
art.
but
But I mean, I think with music, it's like I don't know if I'm workman-like, but I have a studio, I have my
yeah,
rehearsal area, I've got all the stuff,
yeah,
and if I don't know, I just get happy when I'm on my Moog, like because
yeah,
like if you're lucky enough to have like a really good guitar or a really good bass or
yeah,
an instrument like a Hammond B3 or a
yeah,
really good to me that as a musician being able to jump on a mini Moog and actually play
yeah,
it, that in
yeah,
itself makes me write something just because this was so happy to have it. And
yeah,
it always gives me more than what I expected. It's like if you're on
Yeah.
a Hammond B3, it's like the same thing. If you're on a really great instrument, you
Hmm.
just feel like I'm just happy to be on it.
Yeah, totally, for sure. Like I play drums, and like I'm not the best drummer, but I like to dick around on the drums. So I'm like, I have fun. That's all that matters. You just like, as long as you can sit down and do something that like, then that's all you need really to.
Yeah, it's just like I think the creative thing. I'll just probably because we're at 1 hour. But one thing is like I think the creative instinct is like I write music because I love music. If it
Yeah.
happens to kick over and I get something where people like it, that's fine. But I never wrote it to try to get in the top 10 or the top 20. I always just wrote it. And I ended up finding things like this. I'm talking
Yeah.
because I found a way to leverage it and do other things. But
Yeah.
it's always something I'm going to do
Hmm.
because I just love to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're feeling it, right, feel the vibe, you're like, this is cool. I like this. Like, and it's hard to find things like that, like a lot of people that don't even have a hobby, or they're just like, I don't know what to do. I'm just gonna go on Facebook or Instagram and scroll through things. Like, what are you doing? Like, do you have nothing like a lot of people are into games, right? Like video games, they'll play
Yeah,
video games,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's not,
But being
that's not
creative is
creative.
like, yeah, I just don't know. It's like being a creative person. Like my
Yeah.
daughter is a graphic artist. She's working on a comic book, a graphic novel.
Oh, neat.
my wife is a theater person. She writes plays, and so our whole
Hmm.
house we're creatives, and
Hmm.
and and we run into people who don't create. We're always kind of like, I don't get that, but I can't understand it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like we create, so it's a different type
Yeah.
of person that can create versus the person that consumes what other people
Yeah.
create.
Yeah.
It's like there has to be a fan somewhere. There has to be somebody that's going to play that
Yeah.
game or listen to the song
Right.
and maybe not play it. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's this different mindset.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't want to diss people that don't like play guitar or something. It's like, everyone has something that they enjoy doing, but doesn't matter
Yeah,
what it is.
they might garden, or they might, do something
Kayaking.
else. They might be an athlete, and that's a skill in itself.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, everybody's got their own thing. But it's like,
Hmm.
one thing I've always got before I leave is, sometimes when we're creators, like people don't understand us. And
Yeah, for sure.
what I found is like, it's like people are like, well, how can you spend all that time in that man cave writing? Why don't you come out? And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, a creative person, part of what we do is, any artist you like, they
Yeah.
go away, they work on
Yeah.
what they're going to work on, then you see them again, right? But
Yeah.
from the Taylor Swift to whoever,
Yeah.
they have to have that space. And a
Yeah.
lot of times, artists, we're by ourselves. When we're in that space, we kind of are solitary to a certain point to get the work done.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some
No,
people
for
don't get
sure.
that. I don't think they get that part of being an artist. They're like, "Oh, you're antisocial."
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, people wanted to like I'm supposed to see some people tonight, and I'm like, I'm just recording these drums. It'll just probably take me an hour, like, and then I'm doing this podcast, and they're just like, okay, whatever. Like, like, and I'm like, what are you talking? This is actually the cool. Like, you should be like, that's cool. But they're just like, whatever. Like you're
Yeah, yeah.
you're not fun. I'm like, it's fun to me. I
It's a
mean,
different life. But I
yeah,
want to thank you for being on the podcast. I want everybody to
yeah.
check out your website, ninjaseo.com.
Tell
And I
them
think
to check. Or I was gonna
yeah.
say, go to Young Coconut on Spotify and check out my albums.
Oh yeah. Send me yeah, if you send me your private chat, I will add that
Yeah,
link when I publish. So the
yeah,
private chat now, send me that link,
sure.
and then if you send it right now, I can add it when I go to publish.
Wait, what? Is it on the
There's a
screen
private chat.
somewhere?
Yeah, if you send me what you just said, so I can add it to the description of the podcast when I
Yeah.
publish
Sorry, I was
to
just in
Spotify.
full. I'll do it right now. That's not it. That's not it. I got it. Hold on. There it is. One
Yeah,
second.
you can just type
Copy.
into that
And
private chat, then I can grab it.
I was on full screen. I didn't see the chat. There it is. Boom.
Yeah, cool. Now I can just grab that and I'll put it into my. I have like another document with your description that's going to go into the publication. So like we are going to fully publish this on all of our platforms. Right now, on
Yeah.
Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. But it will be
Yeah.
on Spotify Video Podcast, Apple Video Public, a bunch of other ones. And
Yeah.
then we
Cool.
create a landing that we'll shoot out to you, and we'll put all that through Podmatch.
Nice. That sounds amazing.
So it'll be fully published. Thank
Cool.
you.
Yeah, for sure.
Have
Yeah.
a good
Thanks
night.
for having me
Maybe your
on.
friends are still waiting. Well, maybe
What's
they're still
that?
waiting for you, or maybe not. Maybe just go back to play. Maybe your friends
Yeah,
are
I
still
got it.
waiting for you, or you're gonna go
Possibly.
play some drums.
It's like, yeah, we'll see. Yeah, not sure, but yeah, thank God, and nice to chat with you, and nice to see everybody. I don't know who was even on this thing, but whoever was watching, see you later.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we usually get
Yeah.
more on the replay, so if we go to Spotify, we'll get a lot more.
Well, I don't even
Okay,
see like
thank
I
you.
don't see like that information on here, but like it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
I just see
yeah.
the yeah.
It'll be okay.
But-
I mean, we end up getting a lot of replays on when we push it out, because we actually push it up on Blogger articles, and it goes to like 11 platforms. By the time we're done, it's like maybe 14 full platforms.
Yeah. Oh, I lost sound. Sound is lost. Wait. I lost sound. Sorry. Like, okay. Bye.